On today's question of faith, is Pope Francis dying? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I am Deacon Mike Hayes. I'm the Director of Adult Ministry here in the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ference, the Vicar for Evangelization.
Ooh, the news is all buzz.
It is. We got our daily headlines from Deacon Jim Armstrong today, and 3 of the headlines were about the Holy Father's condition. So if you did not hear, this is from Vatican News, the results of the medical tests carried out over the past few days and today have shown a polymicrobial infection of the respiratory tract, which has led to further change in therapy.
Right.
All tests carried out to date are indicative of a complex clinical picture that will require appropriate hospitalization.
For the science informed on this program, you learn a lot in this program. A little science, a little religion, a bunch of other things. But a polymicrobial respiratory tract infection is a mix of microbes like viruses or bacteria that infect the lungs or another part of the respiratory tract. That's not good news because healthy people rarely get that, according to the New York Times.
Did you see the image of the Holy Father before he went into the hospital? His face was like all puffy and full.
Well, they're probably
his neck.
Pumping him up with steroids and stuff to open his lungs a little bit. I mean, that's what, my mom was that way. My parents both had like pretty bad lung kinds of issues. So that tends to happen. It's just a side effect.
Yeah, I saw Chris Stefanik posted the picture, and he said, God bless the Holy Father. Like, he still got vested that day and went out, and even though he was not looking well, and I'm sure he wasn't feeling well. And our Holy Father, too, only has, I think, half a lung, right?
Yes, correct, yeah.
So,
has one lung and then a half a lung is, I think, what you mean, right?
No, I thought he only had one lung, and the one lung that he had is only half of it. I think. Whatever it is, he does not have 2 full functioning lungs.
Correct, yeah. He doesn't have
but
good
he
lungs.
is certainly a fighter. But when I texted you about talking about this, it was because I remember this sort of thing when Pope John Paul II was Holy Father, and he was battling, and you get to a certain point, and you did this with your parents and with mine too, that when things start to accumulate like a snowball, that's when it can get really dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, he has pulled out of situations before, and people kind of wrote him off, so who knows? He may be back within a week or 2, or these may be his final days, which is why we asked the question that we did.
And he needs prayers.
Totally, and that's part of the reason we wanted to do this show today, that if you go to Mass every day, you know that you mention the Holy Father. The Holy Father is mentioned in every Eucharistic prayer. And if you pray a rosary, you pray for the Holy Father's intention. But even being more deliberate, if you don't do any of those things, pray for the Holy Father for his spiritual healing first. And if God wills it, then for his physical healing too.
Yeah, and prayer of the faithful too, where we pray for our Holy Father as the first one usually. We actually added a second one today as we prayed for the sick. I had actually had my sister's just been admitted to a nursing home, and so I asked them if they would add her to the prayer. And we were just talking about, we should add Pope Francis to the prayers of the sick also.
That would be a good podcast show eventually. What is the ordering, if there is, to the prayers of the faithful at Mass? Because there actually is a specific order. Yeah, there's a hierarchy of needs that are mentioned there. We'll do that on another show, but maybe bring Father or Bishop Boost.
Bishop Boost.
Yeah. Who did you say? Oh, Garris?
Mary.
Mary.
Parish.
Yeah. Or Bishop Boost. One of those two. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I was wondering, because the Oscars are in 2 weeks, conclave is up.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a very interesting time for people to be considering the possibility of a new Holy Father, if that is the case. And I remember back in 2005, is that when John Paul died?
Correct.
I went over with Father Joe Koopman and Sister Denise Marie to wake his body. Somebody paid for my ticket because I really liked John Paul a lot. I waited 14 hours.
Wow.
And at that time, President Bush was president, and Condoleezza Rice was there, but also Bill Clinton came in, and because all these American dignitaries came in, rather than having 2 lines going through St. Peter's, they shut one down.
Oh, wow.
So it became twice as long to get through. But we did get in there at the end of the time. But it's certainly interesting to be a Catholic because it's only in our faith, because we have a Holy Father who is the unifier of the entire church, he's Peter, that these things matter, and not just to the Catholic, but it becomes world news.
Right.
Like conclave, I'm sure many Catholics have seen it, and we can talk about that. You have? But there's a lot of non-Catholics who have seen it and are intrigued with the ritual and with the organizational structure, the hierarchical structure of the Catholic Church. Because for better or for worse, people know who we are, and we are united, and we are global, in a way that no other church is.
Yeah. I mean, I think an interesting too, like, people gathering in Rome while conclaves are happening, just waiting for the white smoke.
Right.
I know some of my non-Catholic friends said, you don't have to send smoke signals anymore to alert people to things. I said, but it's so cool.
That.
Yeah,
they like
it's so cool.
Even, conclave was okay, and I could get into my critiques of it.
Sure,
I just liked Young Pope way better. I loved the Young Pope was my favorite TV show of all time. I wrote a review for Word on Fire. Before you get mad at me, you can read what I wrote there if you want. But what I like is the beauty that Paolo Sorrentino reconstructed the Sistine Chapel, and you got in a, yes, it was a mock-up, but it was really good. And I think they may have used the same set for conclave. But there's something about the ritual and the beauty and the traditions of Catholicism that are intriguing to people. They're mysterious. And because of our veiling of things, and even the cassocks that the cardinals are wearing, or they have the cassocks ready for the next pope. And, the famous story that John the 23rd was so big that they had to undo the seam on the back so it would fit around. Like, all that stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
John Allen, who writes for Crux, he one of the things that he's wonderful at is giving you insights to some of these mysteries of the faith. And I by mysteries, I don't mean like dogma as much as I mean some of the practices that are interesting to outsiders, or even insiders.
And, true. Yeah, it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And like, the room of tears, and someone's elected. I can even remember Pope Benedict one time was giving an interview with somebody, and they asked him about the conclave, and he said, well, I can only say so much. He said, but it was obvious that the guillotine was going to fall on me. He goes, everybody applauded.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like...
Well, it's interesting, too, because all that's supposed to be private and secret. But when I took my History of the Popes class with Father Tom Tiff, God rest him, at the seminary, you would have liked him a lot. He had season tickets to the Indians, and he would bring his papers and he would grade them. And
I've heard about this.
And there's a bench designated to him just outside where I used to work out, what used to be Classroom A, now it's Aquinas Hall. Yeah, you would have liked him a lot. Anyway, he was a historian, PhD from CUA, and when he taught the popes of the 20th century course, it was like hearing gossip the way that he taught the course. And he had someone tallied all the votes. Like the first vote was this, the second vote was that. We're not supposed to know that, but somehow we know that. Yeah. And even in conclave they showed, and I think the young pope too, how they thread the votes and they still do them on paper. They're not do them digitally. So record, all these things are interesting. And even when a pope is buried, and I think this is interesting about Catholicism. I keep saying the word interesting too. I noticed that. The popes are put in a very simple wooden casket. Yeah. And the funeral rite is the same for the pope as for a pauper. There may be different prayers for someone who's married or someone who's a priest or a nun, but it's the same. A funeral liturgy is a funeral liturgy. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah, agreed, yeah. And I think with the tallying of the votes, too, the cardinals kind of keep track themselves. They say they're only allowed a little notepad. They're not allowed to bring any papers in or anything.
And no technology.
Yeah. And so they say that they just kind of keep their own tally because no one's there like screaming out, Bergoglio, 21 votes. No one's doing that. And so they have to keep track themselves. There is someone there who's keeping track, but they're not announcing it, is what I'm trying to say. So if you want to keep track of if you're keeping score at home, and we know you are, you have to do it yourself in the conclave.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I did hear, again, I just said interesting. Let's tally them up. Pope Francis has requested to be buried not at St. Peter's, but at St. Mary Major.
St. Mary Major,
Yeah, which is the place that he likes to visit before and after every pilgrimage. He loves the icon. It's an ancient icon of Our Lady, and he has a very deep devotion to her. And he'll bring a bouquet of flowers to that altar before and after each visit, which is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Bernini's buried there, too, in an unmarked grave.
Yeah, I'm reading Pope Francis's life, his new biography that is being. Stephen Colbert does the audiobook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. And then there's a priest who does like his voice. So there's like background on the event he's talking about, and then a priest does his voice of the notes he's made. And it's interesting because he's doing it as sort of like a timeline of history. So like one chapter would be September 11th, another chapter would be World War II, another chapter would be the economic collapse after 9/11. And so he's kind of looking at his life through those larger events of history, as well as just events in his own life, his own personal life, like his journey to the priesthood and
so it's an autobiography or biography? Did he have help writing it? Do you know?
It looks like he had help writing it. It looks like that from what I can tell. I'm listening to the audiobook. By the way, I'm killing that, by the way. I just started listening to audiobooks this year. Oh. I've read 5 books in a month.
We should do a podcast on that. Is listening to an audiobook reading a book or not? That would be a great podcast.
I've done research on this. It is, with some exceptions.
There's got to be a distinction, though, because listening is different than reading.
Yeah, you don't go back as often. They said, you might reread something and you don't generally go back. I do, but most people don't. So
when I was writing my dissertation, my 3 chapters plus, 3 of the chapters I ended by analyzing an O'Connor story, Flannery O'Connor story. So did I read the story or did I listen? Yes, I did both. I had an audio version, and then I had the book before me, so it was being read, and I was reading it, and I marked it up.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think so, because you're receiving with more than one sense, more than with just your eyes and your ears at the same time. I think you get more out of it, and it's fun, which is why reading is so important, and for parents to read to children, I think, too, and read a book with someone.
Yeah. What someone told me, too, is that when you're listening to an audiobook, like you're generally not taking notes because you're probably driving or walking or whatever it is that you're doing. You're not just sitting in a chair and doing it. But they said when you finish a chapter, think about what were the main ideas of the chapter and write those down, because those are the things that you generally remember anyway, as opposed to all of the details. Yeah. And so, so I've been doing that. I'm like, okay, the main ideas of this or this. And I'm reading some books for fun. Like I read the Ricky Henderson biography, is one of the first ones I read. I said, let me see if I can do this with something fun, then I'll see if I can do it with something a little heavier.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned that before on this show that one of the reasons I read is because it calms me down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it relaxes me. And when I listen to books on tape, used to be CDs in my car. I would do it because I have a lot of time. But if I try it in my room, then I start doing other things because I'm like, I can multitask. I can listen to a book and do this. Where when I'm reading, I'm just reading. And I'm in a book club right now. I'm reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
I like Tolstoy, Anna Karenina better, but someone said just wait until the end and it'll be good.
Go into the classics. Yeah.
Anyway, maybe I should read. What's the book called by the Pope?
Life.
Okay. I've read all his encyclicals.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I have not read his piece on the Sacred Heart yet, which I need to read.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't think I've read that either, so I'll have to look at it.
What's your favorite piece of a document or book by Pope Francis?
Probably Joy of the Gospel.
Same.
I think that's probably his best work in general.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the things he's written, I think that's the thing that speaks to me. Christus Vivit, I think, is probably up there for me as well. Different things in there. I often think that those of us who've been trained in Ignatian spirituality can kind of see that in almost everything he's written.
Yeah.
And I know people who say they get confused by his writing when I explain to them sometimes an Ignatian principle. They're like, "Oh, that makes sense now," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I guess that's it. But
I appreciated Joy of the Gospel after reading Evangelii Nuntiandi by Paul VI because I did not realize how much Pope Francis was looking back and trying to elevate what Paul VI had done. And I have a theory about Paul VI. He took over the Second Vatican Council after John the 23rd died, and the conservatives hated him because of what happened with the liturgy, and the liberals hated him because of Humanae Vitae. So by the time 1974 rolled around and he puts out this wonderful piece on evangelization, no one was listening. So I think Pope Francis like, you all missed this. Let's bring this back. And there's so much in there that's so rich and so good. Yeah, I love that document. The other one that I really love, and I think we talked about it on here, was the letter that he wrote about reading literature.
Oh, yeah.
Which came out, I think, July 12th or something.
Yeah, we did a podcast on
We
that.
did.
Yeah.
That was
good, yeah.
Yeah, and especially as one who loves to read, that was like, thank you, Holy Father, for inviting people to read.
And the letter to grandparents.
Oh, yeah,
did,
that was
you
great,
really
too.
Liked, yeah.
Two letters to grandparents,
Oh,
in
that's
fact.
right, yeah.
And, yeah, so hopefully he's not dying.
Right.
But eventually he knows, and you said this too, like he's not going to be Pope forever.
Yeah, and he
so
knows,
it is nice.
Even
nice
even the biography, right? When you think about it, he's writing about his life. One of the things he says is that people don't often look at their life as a continuum, and he goes, and it's really good to have that kind of reflection on your life. He said people should write these things down. And he said, and so, he knows that there are fewer days ahead of him than there are behind. By the way, there are a few days ahead of you and I, probably,
I could
behind
go
us.
get hit crossing East 9th after this show. So
I just turned 55. I don't think I'm living to, what's that, 111,
Does it make you feel good if I tell you that I mentioned you were 55 and a couple of people said, I didn't know he was that old? Which is good. It means you carry yourself young.
Exactly. No, I was at Theology on tap one night, and I think I made some allusion to being in my 50s, I think. And one of the young adults who plays softball looked at me and went, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And I said, what? And he goes, your age. And I said, yeah. I said, I think I was 54 then. And he goes, I never would have thought that. He goes, if you had told me the reverse, I would have believed 45. He said, in fact, I'd probably believe 35. And I was like, well, thank you very much.
I could pass for an old 30s or early 40s until, well, even now, but my beard has a lot of gray and white in it.
Yeah.
And it's full effect now to keep my face warm during the winter. So that reveals my age.
It's one of the reasons I shaved my head, I think, Although I don't know. I mean, my hair is still dark, like around the edges, sort of like Bishop Malesic has just hair around the edges.
The wreath.
The wreath, very nice, yeah.
Laurel leaf.
But it was still brown, like when I started shaving. I just thought it looked better.
Well, Mary Fugate reminded me that you should embrace age, and it's really beautiful as you get older because it's part of what living is. So
that's true.
Yeah.
And when I started losing my hair, two things happened to me when I started losing my hair. One, it bothered me, right? And my friend Dave Jennings, who you might remember was a punter for the Giants and a broadcaster for many years. Dave was bald, and he saw that it bothered me, and he pulled me aside and goes, the more you make a big deal out of this, the more everybody else is going to make a big deal out of this. He goes, you look fine. Just shut up and live your life, And it never bothered me again,
Great.
And I was like, because, he said, do you look at me any different because I'm bald? And I was like, no. And he goes, yeah, my point. And then the second thing was I was just like, it's just easier.
Yeah, I suppose. Except I would worry about getting sunburn.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's why I wear a hat everywhere.
Yeah.
But I mean,
My dad lost his hair young. He also flew out of the windshield of a car in a car wreck and had to take skin graft off his side and put it on his head. So, but I looked at pictures. When he got married, he was 46. I have more hair now than he did when he was, I'm 49 now. But, you're going to lose it all anyway, and you're going to die. And unless you're a saint, your body's going to corrupt. So, whatever. Worry more about heavenly things. Store up your treasure in heaven.
That's right.
Not in your hair. Although if you have nice hair, praise God for it. I mean, enjoy it. Enjoy your hair.
Exactly. My wife. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Even if it's on your face, like mine is. I'm getting a beard trim on Thursday, though.
Oh, very nice.
We'll see what happens.
Do you enjoy that? Like getting a beard trim?
It's been a while. The last time I had my beard trimmed was in Italy, and I did like it. I don't remember. The guy's name was Gabriel or Sebastian or something.
Yeah, my friend loves it. He says he feels so cared for.
Yeah, they put on the black gloves and they, shampoo your beard. And
hot towel.
I love my favorite part of a haircut is the neck shave with the straight razor and the hot towel on the back of the neck. I love that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyways.
So anyway, pray for Pope Francis and his health.
We will. I was waiting for a creative transition from a barber's stool to briefcase marketing, but you didn't do it. You didn't do it.
A barber stool. Let me try it again. Okay, a barber stool.
No, we don't know. Like, just leave this in there. It's funny. But
hey, if you need a close shave with your marketing,
where you put your briefcase down when you get into the barber's chair, something, I don't know, whatever.
We were close.
Yeah.
But you know what Briefcase Marketing does, right?
Remind me.
They make sure that your church doesn't have a bad website or scattered messaging. All your kind of, the public face of your parish is what they will really work with.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to have disheveled hair and a bad look. You want to look good. You want your marketing to be inspiring and to deliver results.
They'll kind of give you like a good haircut, right? They'll cut things out that you're doing wrong, and they'll make things look right that you need to look right.
Yeah, and a nice thing about a good barber is like a good drummer. They'll know what not to cut and when not to play. So Briefcase Marketing does that too. They figure out what works best and keep the content that you need. And if there's other things that you don't, get that out of there so you could have a really beautiful website.
Exactly. They'll clarify your message to attract the right audience. They'll streamline your website to convert visitors into donors, volunteers, parishioners, and they'll make it all consistent. That helps to build trust and deepen relationships across all of your marketing platforms.
And you may say, well, I want to see this. Well, where do you look? Well, go check out their Google reviews. They've done superb work with our friends at Theology, the Body, Cleveland, St. John Cantius, Tremont, and we could even put some samples of that work in our show notes to make it easy for you to check them out.
It's like looking at those pictures in the barbershop of the different kinds of haircuts, and you see which one you want to have. You could do the same thing with this.
Yeah, but you can't do that on your own, because sometimes you may say, I like that haircut, but your face is a different shape.
True.
So you need to find out what fits you. And you know who can help you with that? Our pal, Dan First. So you can text him at 308-627-1262, and he'll take good care of you at Briefcase Marketing. That's briefcase.marketing.
All right.
We got their link in the show notes, by the way, in case you were wondering.
We did, yes. So, by the way, 260 people as of this morning are now registered for the Ignite Conference.
Wonderful.
Yay.
It's going to be great.
So it's at St. Ignatius High School. You can check out ignitecatholic.com to register. We still have some space available over the next few days. That's Saturday, the 22nd of February. You'll start bright and early. Doors open at 8 o'clock. Things will kick off at 9 o'clock. We'll go all day, and then we'll do a holy hour in the chapel across the street at Ignatius's High School Chapel. And then from there, we will process down to the wonderful parish of St. Pat's on Bridge. You'll be there.
I'll be there. I'm going to be presiding at Mass.
Correct. I will be the deacon of the word.
And I think someone told me, maybe Nicholas, because I was at Grapevine on Thursday night, that I'm given a little fervorino at a holy hour. Is that true?
Correct. That is correct.
I can handle that.
And then Father Eric Garris will be the homilist. Father Pat Schultz, one of the speakers, Jackie Angel, and Sister Mercedes are our big speakers for the day.
Cool.
So $65 will get you in the door. So ignitecatholic.com. Check that out in the next couple of days. Get it while it's hot.
Be there.
And St. Pat's on Bridge can be our church search for this week.
It's a beautiful church, Gothic, clean windows, nice. The other thing, I think I may have mentioned this on the show once before. There was a tendency after the Second Vatican Council for people to destroy beautiful things, and I credit the Jesuits. When they went in and took over St. Pat's, they didn't touch anything in the sanctuary, although they did make accommodations for the liturgical renewal.
Sure, yeah.
But they kind of built their own stand in front of the communion rail and did all that without destroying what those who built that church had intended, and the beauty's still there, and I respect that very much because that took wonderful foresight. It's easy to be an iconoclast. New ideas come, you're like, down with the old, in with the new, but then over time you realize, I'm sad we did that because that was some pretty cool stuff that we got rid of, and they respected the tradition, yet moved ahead and followed where the church was calling in terms of the liturgical renewal. So I credit them for that always.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so gospel for the seventh Sunday in Ordinary Time from Luke. Love your enemies. It's the first line here. To you who hear, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. I love the line later on. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you love the people who love you, that's pretty easy to do. Loving the people who make it hard for you to love them, that's the hard part.
Yeah. And anything that Jesus ever says, he does. And he'll never ask us to do anything that is impossible. Now, is it hard to love your enemies and do good to those who hate you? Yes. Actually, it is impossible without God's grace to do that. But that's what God allows us to do. And it doesn't mean that you have to have warm and tender feelings for people who have harmed you. But it does mean that you will their good. You want what's best for them. And that's actually a sign of holiness and healthiness. I've been thinking a lot about the fact that you can tell an awful lot about what someone thinks of himself or herself and how they understand God's love for themselves by the way that they treat other people. Because there's a direct correlation there between the way you treat others and the way you understand God has treated you.
Yes.
So if you think that God is a tyrant and hates you and is constantly waiting for you to mess up, that will show in the way that you treat other people. But if you've experienced God's deep love and mercy, despite your sinfulness, you will show that to other people, despite their sinfulness.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think of it this way, too. There's about, 20 people in my life who probably drive me crazy, right? I just have a real hard time with most days. You're not one of them, by the way.
No, that's okay.
And,
if I am.
But the thing that I always reflect on is how crazy do I drive those people? I probably drive them just as crazy as they drive me.
Yeah.
And so that it helps me to open my heart just a little bit more and say, okay, I should have a little more patience with this person today.
Yeah. And praying for people that you don't like really does help.
Yeah.
It softens the heart.
It does indeed.
I speak from experience.
As do I.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So pray for Pope Francis and know what he prays for us.
Yeah. And people who are very sick and even people on their deathbeds, they're very close to the Lord and have special access. So, I'd be interested to know what he's praying about right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But we'll pray for him.
All right. So we'll pray for him. And while we're praying for him, we'll see you all next week here on Question of Faith.